Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Humphrey and I'm the Chair of the Board of Lynas Rare Earths. I'm pleased to welcome so many of you here today to this annual general meeting of the company. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, as well as the traditional owners of the lands on which we work, live and meet in the eastern goldfields of Western Australia. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending the meeting today. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all shareholders joining us today, both in person and online. Ladies and gentlemen, today's AGM is being filmed and it is being live streamed via the internet. Details are available on the Lynas website. When we come to the Q&A section of the AGM, we will take written and audio questions from shareholders joining us online, as well as questions from shareholders in the room. Online attendees can submit questions via the Lumi platform at any time. Voting today will be conducted by way of a poll on all items of business. Online voting will shortly open for all resolutions. At that time, if you are eligible to vote at this meeting, a new Vote tab will appear. Selecting this tab will bring up a list of resolutions and present you with voting options to cast your vote. Simply select one of the options. You do not need to hit a submit or enter button as the vote is automatically recorded. However, you have the ability to change your vote up until the time I declare that voting is closed. I now declare voting open on all items of business. The voting tab will soon appear and I will provide notice before I move to close voting at the end of this meeting. For information on how to submit a question or vote, please refer to the Lumi platform user guide on our share registry website or in the document tab of the Lumi webcast platform. I would now like to introduce my fellow directors. Joining me here today are our Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director, Amanda Lacaze, and Non-Executive Directors, John Beevers, Philippe Etienne, Grant Murdoch, and Kathleen Bozanic. Vanessa Guthrie is joining us online today and can't be here because of family circumstances. If you have joined online, you will see Vanessa on screen, while shareholders in the room will hear Vanessa via audio. We are also pleased to be joined by Sarah Leonard, our General Counsel and Company Secretary. Our audit firm, Ernst & Young, is represented by Trevor Hammond, partner, who is also here in the room with us today to answer any questions you might have relating to the audit. I understand that all shareholders present have registered with our share registry Boardroom before the meeting. The notice of meeting was dispatched to shareholders on 27 October 2025 and accordingly this meeting is deemed to have been properly convened. We have a quorum of more than 2 shareholders and accordingly the meeting is able to transact the formal business as set out in the notice of motion. Before we proceed with the formal business of the meeting, I will make a short address, after which Amanda Lacaze will deliver the CEO presentation. We will then table the FY25 financial statements. At that point, we will pause for any questions on Amanda's presentation and the financial statements. After questions, we will continue with the formal business of the meeting. There will be an opportunity for shareholders to ask questions on specific resolutions. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to see so many of you here joining us today, both in person and online. As you will all be aware, 2025 has been an exciting year for both the rare earths industry and for Lynas. The year marked the end of the 5-year Lynas 2025 growth strategy. Major projects at Kalgoorlie and the expansion of Mount Weld were largely completed during the year, and notably, we produced our first dysprosium and terbium oxides at Lynas Malaysia in Kuantan. As our Lynas 2025 strategy wraps up, our operational footprint is now larger and future fit as the market continues to grow. So where to from here? As shareholders know, during the year, we developed our plans for the next phase of our company's development and released those plans to the market in our Towards 2030 strategy. The new strategy release was done in conjunction with a $930 million capital raise through an institutional placement and a very well-supported shareholder purchase plan. The capital raising gives us the balance sheet strength to support our strategic growth ambition. This year, the rapid evolution of the outside China rare earths market this year saw the rapid evolution of the outside China rare earths market. The capital investment made over the past 5 years has ensured we are well positioned to optimise assets and to capture value for our shareholders. Shareholders will be pleased to know that the board will consider the issue of distributions in conjunction with finalisation of the half-yearly accounts in February 2026. Lynas's leadership position in the outside China market also enables constructive engagement with governments around the world as they develop policies and implement actions to develop and expand the current non-China rare earths supply chains. The Towards 2030 strategy announced in August sets out our plan to deliver returns from existing assets and to develop new growth opportunities. Initiatives include adding resource and scale, increasing downstream capacity for heavy rare earths and NdPr separation, and expanding into the outside China metal and magnets market. The project delivered as part of the Lynas 2025 initiative provided the foundation for our Towards 2030 strategy, and Amanda will shortly provide you an update on the strategy and recent developments in her CEO presentation. From a financial perspective, performance was affected by investment in new facilities and new products, as well as the low rare earth market price that prevailed during most of the 2025 financial year. Profit after tax, or NPAT, of $8 million was delivered for FY25, and the annual revenue increased to $556 million, primarily as a result of increased NdPr production and sales. Operationally, the team delivered a number of significant achievements. During the year, this included safety improvements with good progress on the total recordable injury frequency rate, although there was a slight increase in the lost time injury frequency rate. Pleasingly, sales volumes of 6,555 tonnes for the high-value NdPr product family increased by 18%, while total REO sales volume reduced by 10% to 10,970 tonnes, as we reduced production of the lower value lanthanum and cerium products. During the year, the average China domestic price of NdPr, VAT excluded, increased from $44 a kilo in June 2024 to $55 a kilo in June 2025. After a sustained period of low market prices, the upward movement towards the end of the June 2025 quarter has continued into the 2026 financial year. Turning to operations. In Kalgoorlie, the new rare earth processing facility is now producing mixed rare earth carbonate, or MREC, which we ship to Lynas for separation into individual rare earth products. The support of experts from our Lynas Malaysia team continues to be instrumental in the ramp-up and flow sheet improvements we have made. The team should be proud of the progress that they have made over the year. Considerable progress has been made. The Mount Weld expansion is largely complete, with processing plant fully commissioned, with excellent progress being made on the hybrid power station. The gas and solar components of the power station were constructed and gas was commissioned in the September 2025 quarter. Solar was commissioned and our 4 wind turbines have been constructed and are currently being progressively commissioned. The new power station has already proven its ability to run solely on renewable energy when conditions are favourable. In Malaysia, upgrades to the advanced materials plant have created an expanded facility with additional processes commissioned and operating an MREC receival, solvent extraction and product finishing. Work to increase the nameplate production capacity has been completed, and as I've previously noted, the first production of separated dysprosium and terbium oxide was achieved during the year in May and June. The production of separated heavy rare earth oxide at Lynas Malaysia marked an important milestone, not just for Lynas, but for the global manufacturing supply chains. Lynas is now the only commercial producer of separated heavy rare earth oxides outside of China. In Malaysia, the solar array was commissioned and began operating in FY25, and 60,000 megawatt hours of renewable electricity was recorded in that financial year. Recently, I was pleased to join Amanda and the leadership team in Malaysia celebrating our 15-year anniversary of the start of construction of the Lynas Malaysia Advanced Materials plant. This was a great opportunity to celebrate the achievements of the past 15 years and acknowledge the contributions of people who have been instrumental to our success over the period. Last month, the board was pleased to appoint Kathleen Bozanic as a new non-executive director. Kathleen is based in Western Australia and has over 30 years' experience as a finance professional in the resources sector. This industry and financial expertise will be an asset to Lynas as we enter our next phase of growth with a Towards 2030 strategy. Welcome, Kathleen. Lynas is proud of our position as the market leader in responsibly produced separated rare earths. As we embark on our Towards 2030 strategy, we remain focused on ensuring Lynas's operations are safe for our people, the community, and the environment. We believe it's important to continue to transparently report on our sustainability performance through our annual sustainability report. The report is available on our website at lynasrareearths.com. If you haven't already read the report, I encourage you to do so and welcome your feedback. In closing, on behalf of the board, I would like to thank Amanda and the executive team for their leadership during the year. I also thank the entire Lynas team for their contribution to Lynas's success in 2025. I would also like to thank all of our shareholders for your continued support. The board remains focused on creating value for all shareholders and looks forward to further developing our business. And I would now like to invite the main show, Amanda, to address the meeting.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, John, for all of those kind words. And I will probably cover some of the areas that John has at least sketched out in his speech. Today marks my 12th AGM as CEO of Lynas, and they said it wouldn't last. In fact, our business is in the best shape that it has ever been, as no doubt you would hope after all of that hard work. As John said, we recently had our 15-year party in Malaysia. You all missed it. We did some excellent dancing. You know, I had to teach the locals actually how to do the nut bush, but it all went down very well. It was 15 years from first construction in Malaysia and 15 years from the first commissioning of the concentrator in Mount Weld. Then we were a startup seeking to establish a business requiring the application of complex and challenging and unknown technology in a market where I think, Paul, it would suffice to say we were not welcome. It is so pleasing. It was so pleasing at that party to see so many of our people, suppliers, customers and partners who had been with us for each of those 15 years. And that extends to the joy of seeing so many of you here today. You have been our greatest supporters, and I look forward to every year having the opportunity to see you again. This year, unfortunately, we said goodbye to one of our most ardent supporters, but I am pleased to see so many of you still here this year. Today, our operating assets are in place, able to serve today's demand and ready to serve tomorrow's demand. We have strong customer relationships. We are a trusted supplier of quality products. We have a skilled and competent workforce. Our people know how to operate our assets and are committed to the success of our business. And we have a strong balance sheet which is future fit. A far cry from our early days. I still carry in my heart the wound of being described as a debt-ridden basket case. So for all of you who have stayed with Lynas since those first milestones 15 years ago, thank you. We are future fit because of your continued support, most recently with our capital raise in August. The support from our shareholders, particularly our retail shareholders, fortifies our determination to deliver outstanding results from our current investments and to continue to pursue opportunities to grow our business. John has already provided you with some of the highlights of FY25. I will provide a little more detail. So 2025, we could genuinely say was the year that geopolitics really came to town in the rare earths market. Sometimes the analysts complain that we won't provide detailed guidance on Lynas's performance. But when you look at the various actions that have shaped the market in 2025, our choice seems sensible. Governments now understand the importance of rare earths today and the expected growth in demand over the next decade. And they are now looking for security of supply and finally recognising that the highly concentrated market dominated by the Chinese is not healthy. So various governments have developed and are implementing new policies to address these issues. This particular set of exciting challenges started in April with Liberation Day in the US, and then some further discussions with the Chinese. It was the first application of tariffs by the US, and it was the first response from the Chinese with, at that stage, a number of non-price controls in the market. That was followed up in July by the really industry-shaping deal that the US government did with MP Materials, which included, it was quite breathtaking really in its breadth and its scope, including equity, debt, and most importantly, some price support, which really has changed the dynamics in the market in a number of ways. That was followed then by some further non-price restrictions from the Chinese, bat the ball backwards and forwards, which have now been put slightly in abeyance, but it is well worth noting that those which were announced in April remain in effect. And then most recently, a number of bilateral agreements which have been signed between the US, Australia, the US and Malaysia, and the US and Japan. Our job at Lynas, apart from, actually running our assets, is to navigate a way through these changes and to take advantage of the opportunities that they present and step over the potholes because some of them can be remarkably deep. So we are in the best shape ever to take advantage of the opportunities and confident of our head start versus others who might choose to operate in this market. In 2025, we delivered a number of significant achievements. We expanded our operating footprint. At Mount Weld, we saw we call it an expansion, but fundamentally we have rebuilt the Mount Weld concentrator and operations there. And as our general manager said, I thought rather poetically, the old plant has been able to retire with distinction. Wouldn't we all like that described about ourselves at some stage? But the old plant, which is a really small plant, has served us very well for a decade. But now we are reusing some of those assets, but the new plant, the new $500 million facility is now operating for us. The Kalgoorlie facility is ramping up. This year, Paul and his team have done a lot to really enhance, the original design there, to improve some of the flow sheet operations, operating efficiency. And of course, everybody knows that we're just ready to really hit our straps. And then Western Power gave us, sort of the gift of really quite some significant power outages, which has made it quite difficult this quarter. And in Lynas Malaysia, we have expanded the facility and done so incredibly cost effectively. And of course, that is the benefit of being able to do an expansion on a brownfield site. in terms of growing with the market, the first separation of dysprosium and terbium in Malaysia is a matter which I think is really quite amazing what the team has managed to do. When we put in the changes to the flow sheet to be able to do 10,500 tonnes of NdPr, we did put in some new mixer settlers and we freed up one of the separation trains that we had had previously. And, Paul's team said, oh, well, there's some kit, we should use that a bit wisely, shouldn't we? And refurbished it, put in place, and we started separating the DY and the TB. Now, we often joke about the fact that, in 2014 and 2015, our production was 100% not on time and 100% not on spec. And that is a feature of, sort of doing something for the first time and having to learn it all for the first time. For the DY and TB, it is a matter of a great deal of pride that it has been 100% on time and 100% on spec. So right first time, absolutely. So very, very proud of that. We also upgraded the Mount Weld mineral resource and reserve during this financial year, and that is really important. It means that we continue to have more than 20 years mine life from Mount Weld, even at our expanded rates. And John has touched on really developing this sustainable supply chain, including best practice sustainability principles within the business. And I will show some photos and talk a little more about our renewable power station at Mount Weld further on. So I'm really happy to declare victory and move on as far as Lynas 2025 is concerned. And we've got a month left in 2025, so it's a good thing, isn't it? But we have substantially completed all of the tasks in Lynas 2025. You will recall, 6 years ago we said, oh, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to increase our nameplate capacity to 10,500 tonnes a year of NdPr. To do that, we need to rebuild the concentrator at Mount Weld, because we need to process a lot more ore to be able to deliver the feedstock for that. Tick. We're going to build a new facility in Kalgoorlie because we need additional cracking and leaching capacity, and it is sensible to do that as close as possible to the resource. Tick. We're going to upgrade our Lynas Malaysia facility so that it can go from a theoretical nameplate of about 7,000 tonnes to 10,500 tonnes. Tick. So when you look at some of the aspiring projects in the rare earths market, we have actually done in the last 4 years effectively from approvals to commissioning what is a whole rare earths project. And so it is, I'm really incredibly proud of the team to have been able to do that. And so now, it's where to next. But some more of that as we go on. But first of all, just looking at Mount Weld, and for any of you who've been at these meetings over the past dozen or so years, of course you will have seen photos of Mount Weld. You will barely recognise Mount Weld as it is today. And our project manager there, I sometimes tease him that, previously we had this mill. What does it do? It's just about 40 tonnes an hour or 34 tonnes an hour, something like that. Anyway, quite a baby mill. When we've had people who come to visit, they look at it and they say, oh, that's the mill. It looks like a pilot plant. Well, I joke that Alex actually went to the mill, online catalogue, and he picked one of every sort to put it into the new into the new plant. We now have 3 mills. Why does this matter? It matters because those mills, as they operate, will allow us to process more of the material, so particularly the fine grinding mill, and will allow us to reprocess some of the tailings, bearing in mind that our tailings facilities have about 7% rare earths in them, which makes them the second richest rare earths deposit after the Mount Weld carbonatite. And it also means that we're going to be able to improve recoveries. And of course, the other initiatives which are part of this is that we've looked at a number of areas where we can improve cost efficiency. So we've taken out some of the manual handling. Under our previous model, we used to handle the ore 5 times before it became a concentrate. Now I think we only touch it once and the rest is automated. So we have added, efficiency and sustainability into the operations. And the final piece of that plant that we are commissioning at present is our water treatment facilities, which will improve our water recycling rates. And of course, water is almost as rare as rare earths out at Mount Weld. So recycling it is an important part of our sustainability approach. Then we look at this, so we need a lot more power to run the additional mills and also to run the water treatment and water recycling. We no more wanted to burn diesel to do that than, the most ardent greenie. I mean, who wants to be burning diesel and creating those sorts of emissions? So we have made, alongside our power suppliers, Zenith, the investment in a gas-firmed hybrid renewable power station. There are 2,500 solar panels. It's really pretty cool the way these operate these days. They come and they're like an accordion, and then they put them on the ground and they just open them up like this, and there you are, you've got a solar farm. Well, maybe not quite, but that's what it looks like to me. But it is rather cute. And 2,500 of those and 4 wind turbines. I have to say, when renewable power was first, sort of a thought bubble in my head in 2016, when I asked Tony Malik, who's our GM at the time, to start doing some wind and solar surveys, I probably had this vision of a single wind turbine sitting out there. The reality is much more complex and impressive than that. But what is truly impressive, as John said, is that we've already had weeks where we've been able to run the plant 100% on renewable power, and that is really very pleasing. Then we go to Kalgoorlie. This might be my very favourite ever photo of Kalgoorlie. It is so pretty, probably rather prettier than it is most days, but nonetheless, it's a fabulous picture. And it is the first downstream plant here in Australia. As I said, Paul and his team have done a lot to improve and enhance even the initial design as we've gone through the commissioning process. The power issue, the announcement yesterday spoke for itself. We've managed outages at Kalgoorlie ever since the day we started commissioning. Unfortunately, in the last couple of months, those have reached a stage where it is just not possible for us to manage them and still produce what we need to produce to feed Malaysia. Every time that we have an outage, a short outage, actually, a power outage translates to a long outage in terms of production. The kiln slows down. It takes 3 or 4 hours to be able to move it back to where it was. And every outage brings with it some requirements for manual handling for our people that we're not pleased to include in normal duties. And additional stress on the equipment that we've just spent so much money on putting on the ground there. We are working, I can tell you that the Western Australian government has been particularly responsive on this. We are working to identify, are there solutions with the network? And if not, we will have to put in an off-grid solution. Unfortunately, most likely for us to be able to do it in the short term, it will be diesel. So having just managed to get out of diesel generation at Mount Weld, it will be disappointing to actually have to put that in place in Kalgoorlie, but it will be an interim solution only. And then we will look for a longer term, probably, off-grid solution unless we can agree some very specific changes with Western Power. Our Malaysian plant has already seen many exciting changes. I was just talking to Bob down here. He came to visit the plant in 2016. You'd be hard-pressed to recognise it now. There's been so much, sort of additional capability put in place in Malaysia. As I said earlier, the first dysprosium and terbium separation, which could only be done in a plant like this for the cost and efficiency that we've achieved. The support of our people and our communities remains key to our success and drives our commitment to continue to develop. Many of you probably saw the video of the first DY and TB production. And when I first saw it, I said, oh gosh, it's so manual. And it was like, no, it's just they all wanted to be in the video. Right, which is really a reflection of their commitment to want to be part of something which was so exciting for our business. And we do continue to focus on the US, where both supply and demand side policies are reshaping the market. So I thought we would just share with you, these are ads which, if you go to Washington and you wander through either Reagan or Dulles airports, you will see these, as we hope will many American politicians as well. And so as they consider further enhancement of their policies, I got a bit frustrated at one stage when there was talk about annexing countries and all those sorts of things. It's like, well, if you need rare earths, call 1-800-Lynas. So we're maybe not quite as brutal on 1-800-Lynas, but essentially what we've got is these which will roll through on those digital billboards, which basically says, Lynas can deliver and what the US needs today. So, Lynas 2025, tick, big tick. And then as many of you who participated in the August capital raise would know, we then launched our very creatively titled, Danielle and I spent a long time on this, Towards 2030 strategy. We felt that Lynas 2030 just didn't have quite the same ring to it. So this is about the strategy over the next 5 years is about making sure that we do deliver the benefits from Lynas 2025. We've just, in the last 5 years, spent about $1.5 billion on fundamentally improving our operating assets. And we are not going to be one of those companies that spends all of the money and then says, oops, here's a nice pretty pony over here. Let's now focus on that and lose the focus on delivering the return on the investments that have already been made. And so we have the opportunity with those investments to continue to grow and to preserve our first mover advantage. But we also have the opportunity and the balance sheet to allow us to grow in other areas, including via partnerships into downstream metal and magnet making, and also by looking at additional resources, particularly those which will be will have more heavies within the resource. So I will finish my presentation where I started. We have the assets and the skills to meet the market today and into the future. Your support 5 years ago enabled the Lynas 2025 investments and has allowed us to retain our leading ex-China position. Our experience allows us to engage with governments with credibility as we seek to develop the outside China industry. And our new Towards 2030 strategy sees us continue to grow our core business and grow into new activities. At the 2011 AGM, where some of you may have been, the Lynas chairman commented that this was a time when there is, without a doubt, a crisis in the global supply of rare earths. There is also a major restructuring of the global rare earths industry underway, both in China and the rest of the world. Well, doesn't history have a habit of repeating itself? Those words are as relevant today as they were then. The difference is that today, Lynas is a proven and profitable producer of both light and heavy rare earths, ready as always to bank the value of the improving market. Our position today is a triumph of vision, discipline, innovation, creativity, and determination over a huge number of challenges faced along the way. So we face the future with excitement and with the same determination we brought to it over the last 15 years, committed to ensuring that Lynas is famous all over the world as the source of the best rare earths that money can buy.
Thank you, Amanda. I will now table the financial statements for the company for the year ending 30 June 2025, consisting of the annual financial report, the director's report, and the auditor's report. The annual report was dispatched with notice of this meeting to those shareholders who requested a hard copy, and an electronic copy was sent by email to shareholders with an email address and made available on the ASX website at the company's website. We would now like to ask for questions on Amanda's presentation and the financial statements. A reminder that only shareholders, proxy holders, and authorised representatives can ask questions. To ensure there is an opportunity for everyone to ask questions, there will be a limit of 2 questions per shareholder during each Q&A session. Proxy holders, please state your name and that you are a proxy holder. Shareholders joining online can ask a question by selecting the messaging tab at the top of the Lumi platform. For more information on how to ask a question, please refer to the Documents tab on the webcast. For shareholders in the room who would like to ask a question, please form a queue behind the microphone at the front of the room.
Hello.
Yes, madam.
Yeah. Is that on? Yes.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Helen Manning and I represent the Australian Shareholders Association. Today I'm stepping in for my colleagues Len Roy and Julianne Mills, both of whom have done the hard work. I haven't. They wish to heartily thank the board for the time they have made available before this AGM, and we discuss matters arising from the annual report, and these matters include financial statements, operational performance, and governance matters. Today, we're holding proxies for approximately 6,000 shareholders, totaling about 600,000 vote shares. Following Amanda's very vigorous presentation, I think we're just going to continue that theme, and it's always good to acknowledge achievements, and I've been told specifically to note the following, so it's a bit of repetition. The first is that the Kalgoorlie facility continues to ramp up to nameplate capacity. Well done. The second is that the Malaysian output now includes heavy rare earth oxides, Dy and Tb, with the new $180 million facility, which will ramp up early next year. Well done. That Lynas has achieved record NdPr production at a time when NdPr pricing has been on the rise. Well done. And good news in stabilising the supply of sulfuric acid with BHP. And we also wish to laud the high-level working relationships Lynas Rare Earths has built with its US, Japanese, Korean and Malaysian authorities to pursue partnerships in the metal magnet supply chains. Well done. And looking ahead, we acknowledge the Towards 2030 strategy, which includes the construction of the Seadrift, Texas heavy rare earths processing plant based on feedstock from Mount Weld and Kalgoorlie. We do note that the US Department of Defense funding grant has been increased from the initial $120 million to the updated $258 million. However, the offtake agreement is still pending. We appreciate the sensitivity, but ask if you can update us on the finalisation of the offtake agreement. Can you talk to this, please? Thank you.
Amanda.
Well, thank you very much for all of the positive feedback, and my colleagues on the executive team, a number of them are here today in the front row, as well as Sarah, and I'm sure that they will happily take those positive comments back to our teams, because it's always good to hear that. The US, you will not be surprised that I won't provide a chapter and verse on the negotiations with the US government, apart from anything else, because it does change fairly frequently. So suffice to say that we are working on it very closely with now the Department of War. However, we're not relying on the government to access the US market, and Chris Jenny, who heads up our sales team, is actually also very focused on dealing with the end-use customers in the US, because their influence on the government is important as well. So John and I talk every week, and every week he says, well, have you got something to deliver yet? And I keep saying no, but it should be next week, John. So we haven't got there quite yet, but I can assure you that it is a matter of focus.
Thanks, Helen.
Bob Richardson, private shareholder. Congratulations, Amanda and the team, for a tremendous performance to 2025. My question relates to the next 5 years. You referred today to defending Japan's market share in relation to 2030. I'm assuming that the Texas plant might be off. It appears that the US is not supporting Lynas to the extent that we expected. It also seems that Lynas is pivoting to Japan, Korea, and possibly the EU. We know that for the medium term, it's only Lynas and China, especially for heavy rare earths, and La Rochelle appears to be servicing the EU. Do you expect the US price floors to be influential over the next few years?
Thanks, Bob. Well, you've got a number of direct and a number of implied questions in that, I think. So I think the first thing to say would be, today, close to 100% of rare earth magnets are made in China and Japan, right? Not in the US. So therefore, our direct customers are actually in East Asia. And so our relationship with Japan has always been at the heart of the success of our business. So there is one competitor, which is MP Materials, who is producing some separated NdPr oxide. And so when we talk about ensuring that we retain what is a hard-fought position as the leading supplier of NdPr to Japan, that is what we speak to. And so, little bit of that's price, a lot of it has to do with being a reliable supplier of quality materials and indeed supplying materials that others cannot produce. Now, whether that's DY or TB or separated ND, which no one else actually does, everybody else provides it as NdPr. These are all opportunities for us to differentiate ourselves. You're right. MP has got a better deal out of the US than we have because they have this one major benefit. They're American. We're not. And, we need to recognize and acknowledge that we will never get the same treatment in an America first environment politically, which is what is there at present. On the other hand, the American market is there are elements of it which are attractive, but it does not have the substance that, for example, the Japanese market has today, or the absolute commitment and determination to develop skills and competencies that, for example, the Koreans have. So I wouldn't completely agree that in terms of priority, but you are right. We are focused on Japan, we are focused on Korea, we are focused on the EU, we are focused on the US, and actually we are focused on engagement with the Australian government as well, and really getting a combination of benefits out of all of those relationships is what I think will give us some really solid foundations moving forward. The $110 floor price, we put very strongly to all governments that it is excellent that there is support for projects which may or may not come online in 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, whatever, how many years it takes them. There is a functioning supply chain today. We're at the centre of that. We require the right sort of air cover to ensure that this functioning supply chain continues to operate.
Thank you. Chris Bevan representing Capilani Super and Bancroft Capital. Two questions for Amanda. The first question is in respect of the 8 October announcement of the MOU with Novion Magnetics in the United States. Question one is, if and when over the next few years there is an Australian magnet making plant in Australia, will Lynas enter into a similar arrangement with an Australian magnet maker?
I've just been told to speak closer to the microphone. Thanks for the question, Chris. It's an interesting question in its formation because the assumption that there may or may not be an Australian magnet maker is a very big assumption. One of the things that you need to make metal and magnets is reliable power. With then, sort of the second benefit being low cost. Right. Unfortunately, we across a whole variety of areas. It's not just because we're in Kalgoorlie. I was recently reading in WA about, in Kwinana, they've put in diesel gen sets to a number of the operations there. So we would see that it is less likely that there will be a magnet maker here in Australia. We do see that there are, I think, Chris, 7 or 8 new magnet making projects sort of globally. And we are engaged with each of them on opportunities to partner in one or other forms, whether it is simply as a supplier of feedstock or whether, as with the case of Novion, sort of we're looking for, is there a joint venture model which may be suitable?
So to understand the answer to question one is, if an Australian plant became operational, you would deal with it on the same basis as on Novion.
Sure.
All right. Question two is, if in about 12 months' time, the current suspension by China of its embargo, that's its list, it's a critical minerals embargo list with critical minerals, global critical minerals imports and exports, is enlivened again after the current suspension for 12 months due to the US trade deal. What, if any, response would Lynas make to that, having regard to the impact it would have on China as a market for both oxides and magnets?
Our assumption today is that this is just a hiatus in terms of some of those controls. When we think about things like the price support agreement, effectively, as the price moves up, China's pricing power, which has been exercised quite extensively over, sort of our time in the market, it is reduced. However, China is very nuanced and very skilled at developing somewhat more sophisticated non-price controls than we necessarily see elsewhere. And so the licensing regime, as it was introduced in April, continues to be in place, and that certainly means that there are a number of customers who are unlikely to be able to source rare earths or rare earths containing materials from China in the future. And so that is an excellent target for us in terms of business development. A number of the areas which are part of the Chinese controls, some of which were announced in October and some of which they are not resiling from, include things like prohibition on the export of technology, on the export of certain inputs to rare earths processing, whether it's reagents, whether it's equipment. Our experience is that there is no stepping back from those. We have a team who's worked since April on ensuring that we have alternate supply chains available to us for materials that we have to date sourced from Chinese suppliers. And we are confident that we are in a position to continue our operations even if the new regulations come back in a fortified sense.
Thank you for your candid answers.
Thanks, Chris.
My name is Robert Keogh. I'm a private shareholder with my wife. 30 years ago, when I had responsibility for the Mount Weld lease on behalf of CSBP, I was advised that a holder of the pastoral lease that covers that area had collected, wherever he found them, traditional owner artefacts and buried them. My question is, in your mining, exploration and other activities, have you ever encountered any of these materials? And do you have protocols to manage that in the event that you do?
Okay, thanks for the question, Robert. Our objective is always to not just be respectful of the traditional owners on the lands on which we operate, but actually to constructively engage with them. And the Nyalpabini, who are the traditional owners in the area in which we operate, we have engaged with them over many years, even though their claim was only validated this financial year. Yeah, it was earlier this year. But we have engaged with them and had them come in and do a number of cultural surveys of the area. I had never heard about, things being buried specifically, but they have done a number of cultural surveys. We have a social, cultural and heritage management plan with the Nyalpabini. And in fact, they have advised us that as they've done these, that this essentially our land was what they call walk-through territory. So it is less likely to have some of the sort of artefacts that you might find in other areas. We are proud of the fact that we have a number of our contractors, not just Indigenous-owned businesses, but are traditional owners. So our mining contractor, Carey Mining, is owned by, is owned by Nyalpabini, as well as some of the activities that we have in Kalgoorlie, where our contractors are also businesses which are owned by members of the Nyalpabini. So we've not heard of that specifically, but we have done a number of cultural surveys, and would be surprised if we suddenly happened upon a cache of artefacts.
So,
Thank you. Stephen Fonte, shareholder. I'm just wondering, with our competitors napping at our heels, how long does it take from the time you find a viable deposit until it gets into production? Our journey has been long, but maybe it's shorter now. I don't know.
Thank you for the question, Stephen. At this International Rare Earths Conference that we were at recently in Kuala Lumpur, there was an industry engineer who had done a study on actually critical minerals processing facilities and had compared them against something called a McNulty curve, which talks about how long it takes you to get from, this is forgetting the exploration, but from, you've built a plant and getting it up to nameplate. And the McNulty curve has 4 layers. The lowest takes forever, and the highest is a very fast move up. Lynas in Malaysia started for the first 2 years, I think, that we were even lower than McNulty 4, but then stepped up and to McNulty 1. The interesting thing is that his assessment was that all of the projects which are, sort of being promoted around the place, they all assume a McNulty 1 startup, which no critical minerals processor anywhere in the world has ever achieved. So if they've got something which says we're going to have separated material in 3 years' time, I'm not actually losing a lot of sleep on it right now.
Jen, Sarah, are there any online questions? Sorry.
My name is Haklo, shareholder. Thank you, Amanda, for such an informative presentation. Would you also like to say a few words about how Lynas is addressing environmental issues, both in the mining and refining, the concentrating aspects?
Sure. As I said, the very initial vision for Lynas was a global firm that processed rare earths on a sustainable basis. And sustainability sits at the heart of everything that we think about, whether it is things like the significant investment that we've made in the in the power station at Mount Weld, or in our management practices with respect to the residues that we produce either at any of our sites. And so it is actually a matter of great deal of frustration for us that still there are journalists who will write that it's inevitable that, you produce toxic residues. It's not inevitable. It is like any industrial activity. You can choose to do it in a way that is sustainable, or you can choose to do it in a way that is not. And in China, 20 years ago, you could have gone and visited a rare earths plant, a steel making plant, a coal, plant, and you could have found practices that were not sustainable. Today, if you go to China, you will see that many of those have been addressed. And so, but the rare earths industry has suffered from this sort of being a badge that has been applied to the industry, which is not true. So at Lynas, at our heart, we seek to be safe for our people, safe for our communities, safe for our environment. We have never been involved in a major public, in a public health event. And so, our philosophy is about ensuring that we manage our processes and we manage our residues accordingly. And zero harm means that there is no way for them to actually, sort of leave our operations. So it's absolutely at the core of everything we do.
I have read in the news a few years ago, specifically in Malaysia, you have some problem with pollution from the government or from environmental.
Yes, well, and with due respect to some of the journalists in the room today, you can't believe everything you read in the newspaper. So in Malaysia, we have a number of regulations. We have been subject to 3 different external reviews of our operations, which have found in each instance that we are compliant with regulations and that we voluntarily adopt international best practice where local regulations are not as significant as elsewhere, are not at best practice. In terms of the way that we manage in Malaysia, as I said, we manage aligned to regulations, and the issue that many like to talk about is the level of naturally occurring radioactive material, either in the material or in the residue. It is a feature of the fact that Mount Weld is dated as being about 2 billion years old, that the radioactivity associated with our materials is classified as very low level. So that is in the feedstock. It is also in the residue. And it compares, so it's at about 6 becquerels per gram. To put that into perspective, that's not far off what you might get in the tiles that you have in your kitchen, for example.
Thank you.
Okay. Sarah, Jan, online questions.
Thank you, Chair. We do have 4 online questions. The first one is from Hilarion Investment Corporation. Can we please get an update of Seadrift in Texas? Seems to be at a standstill, most likely held up by bureaucracy. Has Lynas been superseded by MP Materials, and when do we expect this to be rectified, please?
Amanda?
Oh, I thought you could have taken that one. Isn't it time he did some work, girls? Isn't this just what we live with every day? Yeah.
Okay. I'll take that. So, shareholders will have seen that in the presentation that accompanied our successful capital raising in August, that one of the things that we revealed was that due to issues we were experiencing with the site in Seadrift, it was possible that the Seadrift facility would not proceed. The update is that resolution of those issues hasn't progressed. And I think it is unlikely that the proposed facility will proceed.
Thank you, Chair. The next question comes from Mr. Stephen Mayne. Thank you for expanding the $75 million share purchase plan and accepting all $182 million in applications. How hard did you market this offer, which was 23% in the money on the day the shares were issued? And then has gone on to suggest some reasons.
We were pleased to offer shareholders the opportunity to purchase shares in conjunction with the institutional placement. I think investors will know that often the quantum of shares made available to shareholders under the share purchase plans is constrained. On the basis that we'd done a number of capital raisings, we elected as a board, and we're pleased to elect as a board, that we shouldn't constrain the applications under the share purchase plan. So valid applications were all issued. We didn't market the plan hard. That's not the idea of these shareholder purchase plans. The idea is to give shareholders, many of you who have been with us for an extended period of time, as we've heard, the opportunity to acquire shares. And on behalf of the board, and especially on behalf of Amanda, it was very pleasing to see the level of support that was experienced. I think initially we thought that that support level might be 75 to $100 million, but it was considerably greater than that, and that was very gratifying.
Thank you, Chairman. The next question is on the remuneration report from Mr. Stephen Mayne. Thank you for disclosing the proxy position early to the ASX, along with the formal addresses, and well done in receiving such strong support on all resolutions. The annual report says we have 47,176 shareholders. Did even 2% of them vote? When disclosing the outcome of voting on all resolutions today, but particularly this remuneration report item, could you please advise the ASX how many shareholders voted for and against each item, similar to with a scheme of arrangement?
I'll take that. I'll take that on notice.
Thank you, Chair. The next question comes from Lynas Investment Corporation. Given the speculation as to the merger of Lynas and MP Materials earlier in the year, has this venture been closed, or is there still a possibility of this being renewed given the strategic advantage of Lynas in conjunction with the domestic advantages that MP enjoys in America?
Yeah, I think the time frame in the question is slightly out. That it may have been 18 months to 2 years ago. There are no current dialogue at the moment between Lynas and MP. These combinations can raise their head at any time because they involve a number of parties, and we could be approached at any time by any of these parties, either by MP or other entities. That's always a possibility, but there are no discussions currently on foot.
Thank you, Chair. That's the last online question.
Yeah, Bob's down here wondering whether he wants to do something to incur my wrath. So, yeah,
Yeah.
he's brave. He was in the Air Force for a long time.
Thank you. Bob Richardson, one of my investor colleagues of a long duration has texted me to say that I've just lost the question. That there was a reference to separating. Damn it! I've dropped the.
That's okay. We'll assume you've asked the question and we'll say you got a satisfactory answer.
That's the land. You were going to separate thorium for the WLP. I haven't heard any more about that. Is there anything you could enlighten us about?
We have a commitment and have invested over the last 3 years up to 1% of our revenue in research, and with a key investment being in thorium extraction. And we have proven that it can be done at bench scale and at pilot, a small scale pilot plant at Anstow. To take that further, we would need to be doing much larger industrial scale trials, and then we would need to do sort of some quite substantial modifications on the plant. The process brings with it benefits. It also brings with it costs, and ultimately we will need to make a determination and some challenges, because instead of dealing with this very low level radioactive material, we end up creating a much higher a pure thorium product, which requires additional handling and management. So the project is ongoing. Most recently, just last month, we had a technical conference in Kuala Lumpur, which was attended by about 500 people, including a lot of the academic community, on opportunities to continue to develop and invest in methodologies and mechanisms for management, not just of WLP, but for other, like Malaysia is seeking to develop its own ionic clays, which also come with radioactivity, actually at a much higher level than ours, alongside those materials. Did you want to add anything to that, Paul?
Yeah. Dare I ask about resurrecting comedy soil?
Yes. It still remains that the concept of Condi soil, which was approved by all Malaysian relevant government departments, is consistent with the IAEA's guidelines on how to deal with residues of the sort that we produce at Lynas, Malaysia. However, that ship has largely sailed because, we have invested in the construction and operation of the permanent disposal facility for the WLP, which is now, substantially complete. It's fully complete in terms of construction, but now almost substantially complete in terms of the depositing of the material into that. And so it's a permanent facility. We won't be digging it out again. Oh.
Thanks, Bob. Are there any further questions?
Chairman, we just have one further online question, which is the issue about power outages related to renewable energy issues?
Not to our knowledge. It is a combination of both a generation and a network issue at Kalgoorlie. For those who know, Kalgoorlie is on the end of a single a high voltage power line. That constrains the amount of energy which can be delivered, but there is also issues associated with the amount of energy which is available within the network. And so we don't see it being associated with the source of the energy. It is primarily a network issue.
Thank you. And as there are no further questions at this stage, we'll proceed with the formal business of the meeting. Attendees in the room will have received one of the following cards upon registration. Blue, which is for voting shareholders, orange, which is for non-voting shareholders, and white, which is for guests. Each resolution will be discussed and then voted on by way of a poll. Details of the proxies received for each resolution will be shown on the screen prior to each resolution being put to the meeting. As stated on the proxy form, I will vote undirected proxies in favour of each resolution. Each shareholder who is present in person and who is eligible to vote at today's meeting will have received a blue coloured voting card from the registration desk. At the conclusion of the meeting, representatives of Boardroom will collect these cards. The notice of meeting, having been duly distributed to all shareholders, will be taken as read. After each resolution is tabled, I will ask for questions from shareholders online and shareholders in the room. Resolution 1 seeks approval of the 2025 REM report, which is set out in the company's annual report. The remuneration report sets out specific details of the company's remuneration framework during the year ended 30 June 2025. Proxies received for Resolution 1 regarding the remuneration report are now shown on the screen. Are there any questions on this resolution? If there are no questions, I now put the resolution to the meeting for voting by way of a poll. On resolution, the text of Resolution 1 is shown on the screen. Has everybody had a chance? We'll now move to Resolution 2. Resolution 2 relates to the re-election of Vanessa Guthrie. The board values Vanessa's contribution and experience, and the board members, other than Vanessa, unanimously support the re-election of Vanessa to the board. Details of Vanessa's background and experience are set out in the explanatory memorandum and on the screen. The proxies for this resolution are also shown on the screen. And I would now like to invite Vanessa to briefly address the meeting.
Thank you, John, and good morning, fellow shareholders. Firstly, my apologies for not attending our AGM in person today. I have had an urgent family medical issue arise yesterday, and I therefore need to be with my husband. So I'm joining you online instead, and I thank you for your understanding. I'd also like to thank you for your support of Lynas, our board, and for me as a director for the past 5 years. In my time on our board, I've endeavoured to bring my 35+ years of experience in mining, minerals processing and critical minerals to our decision-making, as well as a strong governance lens, including over 9 years serving on a variety of ASX-listed companies. As a result, along with my fellow directors in delivering value to Lynas through our growth agenda, I've worked hard to also contribute in 4 key areas. Firstly, an unflinching focus on the safety and well-being of our people through our EHS committee. Secondly, the engagement of our employees and retention of key talent as chair of our Nominations, Remuneration and Community Committee. In expanding our understanding of the world-class Mount Weld carbonatite deposit through my deep geological experience. And lastly, the development of our strategy that positions Lynas
Thanks, Vanessa. Are there any questions on the resolution? If not, I now put...
John.
Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
My sympathies for your family situation, Vanessa. We have noted that you have several board positions, and we were hoping that you might talk to your workload, please.
I think she's been covered.
Certainly.
I know he's...
Yeah, Vanessa, do you want to say something? I'd just say in a preliminary way that one of the things that I as chair monitor is the workloads of my colleagues. Vanessa's a very hard working director, has never missed a meeting, and accordingly, well, we've taken Vanessa's workload into account in framing our support of her re-election. Vanessa, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, John, and thank you for the question. And I'm sure you will have noted my recent appointment to another board. As a result, in the first half of next year, I will be looking at and rationalising my portfolio to make sure that I have absolutely the time, energy and commitment and motivation to commit to Lynas as a director.
Thank you. We just wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Are there any further questions? And if not, I now put resolution 2 to the meeting. We'll vote on a poll. The text of resolution 2 is shown on the screen. And I'll now move to resolution 3. Resolution 3 relates to the proposed election of Kathleen Bozanic. Kathleen joined the board last month and brings over 30 years' experience as a finance professional of listed and private mining and contracting companies. The board, other than Kathleen, unanimously supports her election to the board. Details of Kathleen's background and experience are set out in the explanatory memorandum and on the screen. The proxies for this resolution are also shown on the screen. And I would now like to invite Kathleen to briefly address the meeting.
Thank you, John, and good morning, everybody. I'm honoured and excited to have the opportunity to join the board of your company and to work with the talented and experienced group of directors and executives at Lynas. Lynas is an exciting, dynamic company with huge potential, and I believe in its strategy and the impact it can have on a global stage. Given it's the first time you've probably got to hear from me or meet me, I'll give you a little bit about my experience that's relevant to Lynas. As John said, I've been working for more than 30 years as a financial professional in mining, contracting, engineering and construction businesses, including as a partner of Deloitte, an executive and a non-executive director. During this period, I've gained a wide range of experience, including all aspects of finance and governance, capital management and allocation, risk, strategy, investor relations and IT. I've also run a large construction project. Further, I have experience in critical minerals and downstream chemical processing. I've worked in well-run large businesses with processes and procedures that are needed to safely and effectively execute and grow. I've also been involved in companies with challenges or that have had to mature as they've grown. I'm passionate about people, and I really love building talented teams that are high performing. I'm currently the CFO of IGO Limited, but soon to retire. Sorry if that's not heard online, and serve on the boards of WA1 as chair and Rugby Australia. I'm also on the Senate of the University of Western Australia. If I'm successful in gaining your support to continue on the board, I look forward to contributing to building and adding value to Lynas. And thanks so much for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Kathleen. Are there any questions on this resolution? No, if there are no questions, I'll now put resolution 3 to the meeting for voting by way of a poll. The text of resolution 3 is shown on the screen. And I'll now move to resolution 4. Resolution 4 relates to the proposed grant of performance rights for the benefit of CEO and Managing Director Amanda Lacaze. Each performance right is a right to acquire one share in the company in the future. More details regarding the performance rights that are proposed to be issued to Amanda are set out in the explanatory memorandum. Proxies for the resolution are shown on the screen. Are there any questions on this resolution? Just one quick one. What price was he assumed for the performance right? For the share?
It's contained in the notice of meeting. That just. The rights are calculated using the 5-day VWAP following the date of the release of Lynas's FY25 financial report, being a price of $14.26 per performance right.
That's the answer. Okay. Are there any further questions? I now put resolution 4 to the meeting for voting by way of a poll. The text of resolution 4 is shown on the screen. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal business of the meeting. And as there are no other items of business that can validly be brought before the meeting, I declare the formal part of the meeting closed. I would now like to complete the poll process and advise that I will close the online voting system in 1 minute. Please ensure that you have cast your vote on all resolutions. For those shareholders present in the room, the instructions for completing your blue voting card are as follows. First, please write your name in the space provided at the top of the card. Second, unless you wish to vote a number of shares in one manner and another number of shares in a different manner, clearly mark one only of the boxes on the voting paper next to each of the resolutions. You may vote for or against each resolution. Please sign in the space provided at the foot of the voting card. And finally, please lodge the completed blue card in the ballot boxes that are available at the doors when you exit the room, or please hand your card to a boardroom representative. For shareholders, online voting is now closed. The result of the poll will be announced to the ASX and will be posted on the Lynas website later today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for attendance at today's meeting and for your continued support of our company. That concludes today's proceedings. Shareholders in the room today, we hope you'll join for some refreshment in the foyer. Thank you.